Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Way is in Training. This is a podcast exploring how warriors should train and fight, as well as how they should live. We will talk about technique, but we'll also dive deep into fitness, mindset, and strategy. We will explore leadership and philosophy as well. So whether you are a young soldier, a veteran police officer, a responsible armed citizen, or simply someone looking for an authentic life, let's examine how the lessons of combat and preparation for it can help us fulfill our potential. Let's explore the way together and learn how the discipline of training can show us our true selves amidst the chaos of life. Hey everybody, in this episode I've got Rob Epifania back on the show. Rob is a USPSA Grandmaster and a phenomenal firearms trainer and just an all-around really good dude. We already had a great conversation that wasn't even captured on the recording, so maybe I'll get some snippets of it and edit it in. But today we were going to talk about something we've both been playing around with, and Rob was one of the people whose conversations with me influenced me to start this, along with Tim Herron and my old buddy Les Martoni and Paul Sharp, who I've known for a long time. And basically it's randomizing training and what that actually means and what that can get you and how it can improve things. So if you don't mind, Rob, let's start out with what you've been doing lately in ACE and how you think this has been helping you out.
Sure. So ACE virtual shooting, right? acexr.com or whatever is the website. Virtual reality training. It's been really effective for me in a lot of ways. And I think we discussed this last time. Did we discuss this last time? I don't remember.
A little bit. We touched on it. Yeah. I think we went for like 2 hours last time.
Yeah. I mean, we can easily go that far. Good. But ACE virtual shooting. So you have practical shooting training within a VR structure. Gives you a lot of opportunities for growth, a lot of different stages within your space. You can use it for full-size stages. You can use it for stand and shoot kind of stuff with a lot of different targets. One of the things that I talk about most that's effective with it is that I am training in a way that replicates live fire training because there's recoil, and because recoil in the game is visual, meaning you actually see the dot move up and down in a recoil path. The higher level your shooting fundamentals are, the more recoil just becomes visual, aka I look at a spot, the gun is going to start to come back to that spot because my mechanics are very good. It's going to be very efficient. So when you're training in that manner in a virtual way where you're actually responding and calling shots off of the dot movement off the target or between shots, like that becomes very, very useful toward training. So one of the things that I did, and we were talking about this just before, but I went on an 8-week live fire. I didn't live fire for 8 weeks. Normally I would live fire train at least once a week in the colder months, in the off season, so to speak. But what I noticed when I was training with this system was that I was live firing a bit less and my live fire performance was improving. So, and we'll talk about how I'm training with it in a minute, but so I decided to do an experiment where I just wouldn't live fire for 6-8 weeks, something like that. Only train with this system, not even barely touch my gun. So I would touch my gun once every couple of days just to make sure everything's translating over, and then see what happens. If things didn't go well or as I expected it to, I have time to dial back in live fire before the season really starts. Or if things go well, I learned something, right? So the interest of learning was behind all of it. In any event, I live fired a couple days ago, and I could tell that I was a lot better. Visually, speed, processing wise, all those things picked up. I hadn't done a lot of draws or reloads in those past 2 months either, and yet things were fine. Now, I could tell that I could use a little bit of polishing, but the physical speed that might need polishing was made up for with the visual speed and processing adjustments, the processing increases that I saw over the course of these last 2 months. So roughly the times are roughly the same. and with some polishing, it's going to get even better. From a shooting standpoint, I could tell that I needed a little bit of more comfort in terms of acclimation to recoil, but that's, if you don't shoot for a while, you're going to need that for a session or two anyway. And again, the speed and the accuracy didn't suffer at all. It was all just me getting used to the gun cycling again. That's all. So largely speaking, that is a tremendous positive toward this experiment. So this experiment worked out really well, and I'm excited to see what happens. It also teaches me that I can put away certain things like gun handling in the interest of growing other skills that are more important in the moment versus just trying to feed my ego and make sure, hey, I'm the draw and reload guy. That's what I do. So I have to continue to be that guy. Right. No,
but you are kind of the draw and reload guy.
I was. Yeah. I mean, people still look at me that way, but there's no ego feeding the need to train that because that's what I need to be. Right. So when you start to attach your identity to something, anything really, and cement it, what ends up happening is you have to do that one thing, and you don't do necessarily the things that are right for your ultimate progress, your ultimate goal. Right?
Can I step in just real quick? Because you brought up something I think that most people don't attach enough importance to.
Yeah.
And that's the lack of ego, right? And like, I come from like a traditional martial arts background. So there's a lot of Zen involved and all that stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so at least there was a lot of lip service in my early life to not having ego. It was lip service, I had ego about not having ego, if that makes sense.
And there's some lip service, even in this conversation, there's some lip service to it, right?
But I think that ego in a real way is the enemy of improvement.
Yes.
Being attached to how your skill appears to others prevents you from being able to truly be as efficient as possible at improving your skill, I think.
Yes. Well, it's a dual-edged sword, right? So ego is necessary to get you to start taking action.
Yeah.
Right. To some degree, but it also has to be totally surrendered if you want to achieve the ultimate of your potential performance in general. So for me, right, being able to remove the gun handling stuff that I'm already really good at and being able to focus on the things that I really want to develop, getting the most benefit for my training time, the most return of investment, so to speak, without also fatiguing myself and exhausting myself, is a huge, huge advantage. And speaking to our original conversation, it ties back into randomized training, right? Because randomized training is an ego surrender in certain ways, right? If we look at two styles of training, block style, which is you're doing reps upon reps upon reps of the same thing, versus randomized training. Block style training will make you really good at the one thing you're doing in that moment, right?
And it's also like there's a trap there too, I think, especially for someone who wants performance on demand.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It gives you a false sense of your skill.
Yes.
I can be really good at a bill drill after doing 100 bill drills.
Yeah.
But I'm not Isaac Lockwood. But I'm not Isaac Lockwood, right? Like I'm not going to be that good at a bill drill. Not that I'm as good as him after 100 reps either. That's not my point. It's just he's the bill drill guy, right?
Yeah.
My performance cold on demand on a bill drill is not the same as my performance after 100 reps of a bill drill, and it never will be.
And bringing that up, so talking about how I trained with Ace, what I would do, my intention, so my goal would be that when I practice the series exercises, so let's say I did give myself a certain amount of repetitions, 3, 4, 5 repetitions on these things, which is typically what it ends up being when I do it. The series, it's 4 different stages, 5 different stages in a row. So you have to perform reasonably well on all of them. You don't have to do the best on all of them, but you have to do decent on all of them to do well in the total score, similar to how a match would be, right? The intention there was that I would record my first run and I would write down my best run. And the goal is, the ultimate standard is first run and best run are within 5% of each other. A good goal for this session is first and best are within 5 to 10% of each other. So there's not a lot of separation. And then if you end up getting over 10%, something either went really wrong, which does occasionally happen, or you got to work your ass off to get it, right? You could tell when you're working really hard to try to get it. So what it tells me when I accomplish that, which is often, quite honestly, it's almost all the time at this point, but it tells me that my skill at the first initial run is pretty good. So I don't need to do anything fancy or try to do anything different than what I would normally do. And it tells me my skill is pretty robust at that point. Right? Does that make sense to you or?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, and I kind of like to amend what I said earlier too, right? Because this is what I think kind of the goal of like the randomized training and increasing complexity, which I want to get to in a minute, is yes, there's always going to be a gap between my absolute best and what I can do cold on demand.
Everybody has that.
But I think that gap can be lessened with training.
Yes. And the higher skill level you become, the higher level of classification you typically have, the less separation between first and best. And that's the whole point of the 5% number. Like that's the ultimate standard that I want to continue to get to. Because if you give me an unlimited amount of attempts, I'm going to get better. Like because you're doing that block style of training. However, I don't want that separation to be too big. The other thing when it comes to that block style training is it's very easy to get caught up in chasing a score without paying attention on what the real thing is, what are the issues that you need to solve, and making sure that you have the awareness to recognize those issues. And I call them junk reps, because what you'll do is, anybody who's listening to this, and this is not just in ACE training, this is an actual any sort of training, is you'll start to chase a time or chase a score with the interest of just getting that time and score. You've no longer, once you've no longer started paying attention to everything that's happening, at that point, you're ruining the quality of your repetitions, and you are probably going backwards in terms of development, because it's not going to help you, like you said.
I feel personally attacked.
I've been that person. And occasionally, if I'm not careful, I'll get a little too far that way too.
It's an easy trap for me to fall into personally, just because of my personality type and my drive, and kind of, I tend to try to bend the universe to my will. I at least intellectually understand at my advanced stage now that I cannot bend the universe to my will, but yet somehow I keep trying.
Well, listen, it's in our nature. Especially you think about a lot of different sports, right? You play a sport, you're doing very, very similar things most of the game, and you're doing it over and over again. It may be slightly different, especially with opposition, but you're doing the same kind of things. Like if I played basketball, like you shot 500 shots a day, 1,000 shots a day, you got really good at it, So and shooting a basketball was, you're on the same court, you're running the same kind of plays, you're doing it. It's a lot of that kind of muscle memory repetition. So it didn't compare quite in the same way to shooting, where you have one chance on a stage that you probably never see again, right? Which is totally different every single time, pretty much. So it's a different method. The training process still can work similarly, but it is a different application where practical shooting is much more of it's novel more often. So that has to be taken into account also.
And that's kind of the challenge of the sport. And one of the ways, and like I did a blog post recently on how it's easy to get caught up in thinking that competition skills are all you need for the real world, when there's more to it. And I know you have a defensive background, and we've talked about this before. But I think that is one of the aspects of practical shooting that can prepare you for the real world, because you never know what's going to happen, and you get one chance to solve it. And it's going to be a random selection of tasks with random conditions.
And it's having the knowledge and the ability to do the tasks that are required of you. That's all tactics. That's all tactics is. In competitive shooting, it's score as many points in as little time as possible. Right. Whereas more tactical defensive situations, there's a lot more involved in it. right? There's a lot of decision making. There's use of cover and concealment, right? If you were with the team clearing a room, like there's room clearing procedures. There's a whole bunch of different things that you can't shoot and no shoot decision making in that moment. Like, and you have some of those aspects in competition, but not everything. So you can't say being a competitive shooter is going to make you a great tactician if you don't have the tactical knowledge to support it, and vice
Yep.
versa.
And also, as much as it is very true that most people on the tactical side could benefit from having a higher skill level at the actual shooting piece and weapons
Absolutely.
handling piece. And I think the best way to get that, I mean, the amount of training and the focus training for practical shooting competition is, I think, the best vehicle for accomplishing that goal, which is a big piece of the puzzle.
And if you think so, again, we go back to the ego discussion. Ego is
Yeah.
what stops a lot of these people, and it stopped me in the beginning too, quite honestly. You would hear it from people, and it would be, "Oh, competition will get you killed," and you start to believe it, partially because you don't want to get, partially because you think it legitimately will if you hear it from certain believable people. But also, there's that little bit. Well, what if I don't do so well? I'm this, this guy, this law enforcement guy, right? This tactical instructor. What if I don't do well? What I'm going to become an imposter, and I'm going to be a bad instructor. Like, what's going to happen? And the hardest part is to surrender yourself to that. And if you really think about it from a service perspective, right? Service of your students. If you're an instructor, if you're teaching people, right? If you're law enforcement, protecting the public, right? Let's say, from a service perspective, it's required that you should learn as much as you can about yourself so that you could be in the best position to perform when it matters, right? So you have to surrender your ego in that moment and kind of take the hit, because you got everybody who does this, they're all going to take the hit at first, and myself included, but it's going to turn you into the best version of yourself so that you can serve the people that you serve better, right? Which is that's what I have to do for myself and my students. I have to say, it's not about me, it's about you guys. So how can I make myself learn as much as I can through struggle and challenge and failure, so that I can now help you get through that process faster?
Well, and I think it's important too. Oh, we're getting sidetracked. I think it's important too. We always do. I think it's important too that, and this goes back to like the ego thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you got to be comfortable putting it out there and understanding that no one wins all the time. Like, it's, right. You've got to just accept that. I mean, that's going to be just the nature of things. And if you're not continually, going back to the Japanese stuff, if you're not continually polishing yourself by doing that, you're not growing. You're not becoming the better version of who you are at that skill. Right?
Correct. And anybody who wins often at this point in any aspect of life has gone through that period where they're not winning most of the time. But they were willing. Yeah. What most people quit in that middle of the road section, right? It's fun when you start. It's fun when you're at the top getting the success you want. That middle section is where everybody quits that doesn't make it, because there's no real gratification. It's a lot of work. There's not a lot of progress. It feels like you're going backwards sometimes. And there's no real, nobody's helping you start. Nobody's helping you start, like, at the top. Like, everybody in the beginning, it's like, yeah, great. And when you're at the top, it's like, yeah, I knew you would do it. But in that middle is where all that stuff is not present, right? So being in that middle section, if you guys, anybody who's hearing this that's in that middle section, continue to put in the work, continue to learn, grow. If something doesn't work well, learn from it. Become aware of it, learn from it, grow from it. And that's where it comes. So let's tie it back into the randomized training. So singular block training is very good at getting you good at something quickly within a session, but it only gives you one experience for that session. Randomized training is changing something within what you're doing for every repetition. So in shooting, for instance, a simple way to set this up would be if you set up 5 targets of different types and you picked an order, you did an order. Okay, so let's say you did left to right. Next repetition, you do right to left. Third repetition, you go middle, left, and then right. fourth repetitions, you go middle, right, then left. You're changing the order every single time so that you are getting an experience each repetition. You could still focus on the skill that you're looking at. In this case, it's transitions, moving the gun from target to target quickly and efficiently and firing immediately. But you're getting a different experience. Now, I posted an article in my online program for my students that talked about this with basketball. And the results were essentially this. Just like I said, the single block style training, the students got better faster. Like they got better faster in that session. However, and the randomized training, they were behind in the beginning. Over the course of the time of the study, the randomized students caught up to the block style students in terms of what they were doing. However, this is where the difference ends. So at the end, they were very, very similar, very close to each other. But when they tested them again, it was like 10 minutes later, and then it was 10 days later, something along the lines of that, in a novel situation. That's where the difference made itself very apparent. The people who were used to repetition upon repetition, the same thing, they performed worse, right? They performed closer to their baseline than their trained level. Whereas the randomized people in the students, or whatever you want to call it, the randomized people in the study, they perform closer to their maximum gain skill. So randomized training, it ended up being about a 26% increase in skill compared to the people who did repetition all the time. So that's a big, big thing. And for us, especially using randomized training in that fashion, really, really, it builds your skill in a robust way. In the short term, it's going to feel kind of crappy. It's not, because you're not going to be getting PRs every time. It's not meant to be that way. But you're going to be getting better in a way that's going to support, whether you're a personal protection oriented person or a competition oriented person, it's going to support your skill set under pressure in those novel situations because you've trained it that way. And you'll also realize that there's not a big difference between doing it different ways within reason. Like going left to right versus going right to left in most circumstances with the same targets, not going to matter. Even if you start anywhere else. I have for all my community, I have 28 talk through videos with ACE. And there's a bunch of that randomized style training. And you'll find that most of those runs are all within 2-3% of each other. You know, they're not my best runs, but they're all really good, you know, which is really good. Another thing I do, which you'll like, once a week, I'll take the 8 series that I do, 8 or 9, and I'll randomize the order entirely. So I'll pick a random number generator and I'll randomize them all. And I do them once and once only, writing down the scores for each one. Right. So the random order number generator, it creates a totally random order. I can only do them once, and I can't do the drills within them as training. I can do any other drills that's part of it, but I have to do that. And I have to sit with that, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Great, not so great, right? Otherwise, I have to sit with those for that day, which you can imagine feels very similar to shooting a match. I'm shooting a 32 stage match, you know, and it's exceptionally effective training, right? And having it all randomized, I don't get a choice in this. I have to perform regardless of what it is. And I'll find that typically most of my scores sit within 10% of my best scores, which is what I want, you know. But yeah, so that's how I'm doing it.
Yeah, and I've been like, even in the simpler drills, like even in the ones that aren't like super complex and like full stages, like say Blake, like I did Blake this morning in my early morning dry fire. I did 1 rep left to right, 1 rep right to left. Then I did the same thing, but strong hand only, then the same thing, but weak hand only.
Smart.
Then I did left to right, adding in a reload between each one. Because I figured out I do reloads in ACE, but I do them as close to the real thing as I can.
Yeah.
So I've got a magazine in a mag pouch, and I make sure to get my hand on it in the proper position, but then I don't draw it, and I bring it up with my
Sure.
hand still in the right position and tap the bottom of the controller.
Mhm.
And I've actually found that that's helping my reloads, as long as I visualize them right, as long as I don't get sloppy with them.
Yeah.
You know, so in my mind, I'm doing the real reload. I'm doing that full visualization, right?
Yep.
And then like the last trip I did was one target freestyle reload, one target strong hand only reload, one target weak hand only.
Nice.
And like I got this idea actually from Tim Herron talking about the Eric Graffel class, because I guess what Graffel does is he increases the complexity on each rep with a particular set of targets.
Yep.
So like each set of reps, he tries to go from the simplest to the most complex, kind of randomly still within the set. You know, just make it a little harder every time.
He will increase and decrease the challenge based upon success.
Okay.
So,
Yeah,
so
I like
if he
that
has
too.
success, so for instance, a for instance would be we shot in his class, we shot a swinger, and then we had a second position to move to. Well, actually, you know, let's even go simpler than that. Activator, swinger, and a couple targets. Okay. For level 1, shoot the activator, shoot open one target, shoot the swinger. If you have good success with that, next level, shoot the activator, shoot the one target with 3 shots, shoot the swinger. Next level, activator, one target, 4 shots, swinger. So now you're getting used to being able to shoot two targets without needing the transition yet. And then stepping it up from there. Then it's 2 targets, 2 shots, right? And then you could just continue to increase from there. Another way we did it also was with 2 positions. Activator, swinger, right? You shoot activator, shoot the swinger, 2 shots. Move to a second position, shoot 1 target. Get back to the first position before the swinger came to the next pass, shoot 2 shots. If you were successful there, you'd add a second target, or you'd add more shots on 1 target. The same kind of way. It was always increasing the difficulty, or if you had to decrease it, if you couldn't do 1 target, you would just shorten the distance of movement, right?
Yeah.
To be able to create success and then build on that.
I really like that, and I've been playing around with that
Mhm.
in the ACE, in the virtual system, like playing around with it, even on like the more complex stages. Like take the one they put in there, because it was one of a stage I gave him a video from a match. It's smooth as fast with the drop turner.
Yeah,
the double drop turner. Yeah, I sent him a video of a match run on that, so they put it in there.
Nice.
Which was kind of cool. But like, there's a bunch of different ways to run that, because you can run the whole thing without any movement, or you can move to the left position and shoot that target on the left.
Yes. Yep.
So I've been playing around with, like, you know, movement, no movement, reloads, left to right, right to left, throwing in some strong hand, weak hand in there, and just trying to, like you said, trying to build up the complexity each time.
Right.
And it's giving me, I'm looking forward to quantifying the data more, because I haven't been doing it that long. I've only been doing it a couple of weeks, right?
Yep.
But it feels like it's giving me some real results, and I'm looking forward to seeing how it shakes out.
It's going to give you real results. I've been doing it for probably since the end of December. You know, and randomized style training has grown in percentage for me. So I would say I'm 80 to 90% randomized now, and 10 to 20% in some sort of block style fashion. So, which, depending on your skill level, will also depend on how much randomization you do. In the beginning, it's gonna be, you're gonna do more skill building, and I think this is the right way to do it. Just my intuition is kind of telling me this also. In the beginning, you're going to need some of that more block style training, where you're doing a lot of reps of one thing, just so you get the skill. And then as your skill level improves, you can start randomizing more. Another thing to think about too is the amount of combinations you have with a 5 target setup, right? So if you have 5 targets, you have a factorial. 5 factorial is what it would be called. 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. You have 120 different combinations in which you can run that setup without adding anything other than just draw
which target you shoot. Yeah,
right. Target order, right? So 120 times 10 rounds, it's 1,200 rounds. You can make a 1,200 round session out of that thing. And that was Eric's, actually, he said the simplest thing to do in terms of training. Target in the front, 2 targets at 45, 2 targets at 90. and do transitions. Like he said, that's the most effective use of training time for someone who's a little tight on time and doesn't want to spend a lot of time creating options. You know, setting up, breaking down, all that stuff it's much simpler. So, but you can think about that with, especially with some of the things that we have in ACE, where we have 8, 9, 10 targets. Like they put a new stage out that's 32 rounds and like 3 or 4 different small positions. And I was playing around with that yesterday, just doing all different types of things to get experience, like playing around with that whole setup. Because there's a lot of good stuff too, because there's targets anywhere from what you would consider to be 3 yards out to 25. So there's a lot of opportunity to play with a stage like that in terms of doing just different things. It's so easy to create different things because you have so many targets.
Yeah.
You know, and the key is also making sure you identify the things that are important to you in training. So like when it comes to ACE, visual speed, visual processing, and transitions, and for me, movement, like shooting on the move on harder targets. Those are things that I can work on effectively within that structure, and just position entry movement anyway. They have enough stages and I have a big enough space that I can do short courses that require a bit of like a 8-foot run, you know, to get to another position to start shooting. So for me, it's a great opportunity to play around with that. The THS short course, Tim Herron short course. That one in particular is a fun one to randomize, because you think, like, you start in the middle, there's 4 targets in the middle, you have a target on each side, right? You have 3 positions that you have to do. You think that it ends up being very simple, but quite honestly, I came up with, like, in the video that I made, the talk through video, I came up with like 10 or 15 different ways to run it, right? You still have to go to the left, you still have to go to the right, or you can start in the middle. You still have to go to all 3 places, but how you do it can be,
and which target order and how many rounds per target,
yeah.
and throwing in reloads.
Instead of doing the normal order that I might do moving through the middle, I would do it in an odd order, right? I had one stage. It's called Black Iron. I did a talk through on that also, but it's you shoot a piece of steel, you have 4 targets, and you shoot a piece of steel. And I was able to make a ton of different combinations out of that. Something that simple. So it's really about just being creative. And what you would see is that most of those were almost all the same. Everything was almost the same, provided execution was done to what it was supposed to be, you know, within 2%. And that's what's cool, especially for people who are, you hear this a lot, people, stage planning, you know, I need to be a better stage planner. You'd be surprised that if you can pick a reasonable plan that speaks to your skill level, allows you to execute to as much of that skill as possible without hesitation, chances are it's not going to matter too much between 2 or 3 different plans. The most efficient plan executed not so great is always going to be beat out by an okay plan executed to your ability.
Well, like, I think a good example of that is Max Leograndis. He seems to always do things with a different plan than the other top guys.
Mm-hmm.
But he's always up there with the other top guys, even though his plan is different.
Right. It's the thing a lot of us would get caught up in is we see someone who we think is, you know, a better shooter, top level guy, whatever. We see them do it this way. And it's like, they know something I don't. No, they don't. They don't know anything that you don't in most cases. They're just thinking about this stage in relation to their skill level and what allows them to execute comfortably without hesitation. Is there the occasional moment where you have that super secret plan that just works better? Yes, but it is so infrequent that most of the time you can trust that your plan is going to work just fine, provided that you trust in it and you can execute it without hesitating. That's 100% of the time. Now, if you guys really want to find out if the secret plan is the best plan, in a walkthrough, take your plan, bring a shot timer or bring a stopwatch, right? Hit, you know, on the beep or when you start, shoot all the targets with your air gun according to giving each target the appropriate attention that you would give it. Right, when you're done, either slap the timer to register a time or hit stop on your stopwatch take a look at that. Then do the super secret plan or the other plan that you're debating on. You'll find that most of the time they're not even within a second of each other. If that's the case, do what's comfortable. If
Yeah.
you see a big difference, which is it does happen sometimes, 2-3 seconds, then you have to do the more efficient plan at that point. Then it should be a commitment to that. Right.
I know that I've been guilty too. And part of this, especially at locals, is like for the training value. So it's not like it's always a bad thing, I don't think.
Mhm.
But I have been guilty of taking the more, I don't want to say aggressive, the more ambitious plan.
Mhm.
And I think that when it really matters, you're better off taking the plan that you know is in your wheelhouse, that isn't lazy, but is something that you know you can execute.
So that goes to, you're deciding to do this for what reason, right? I'm choosing to do this plan because I want to see what happens. True process focus, let's say, right? I'm choosing this plan because I want to see what's possible. I want to see what happens. I've done that at nationals actually in the past. 2020 nationals, the last stage, I chose to shoot a very aggressive activator sequence when everybody else was doing a little bit of a different one, because I said, well, listen, I think I'm capable of it. I don't know, but I'm going to commit to it anyway because I want to challenge myself, right? So I shot it. Now the awesome part was it was activate, partial, open target, swinger, right? And it was quick for that. Like I had to be on point to do it. Anyway, I went through it and I did it, right? Stage time is good. Everything was pretty good there. I had one of the faster stage times there. On the swinger, 2 alpha dead center, boom, right? I had
Nice.
just had enough time to do it. However, on the other 2 targets, I had 1 miss each because I pulled off the targets easy. So pulled off the targets early. So in that moment, I can't be upset about that, right? But it was a challenge. I chose it. I committed to it. I did it. The swinger worked out great. The other ones didn't. But I wasn't upset about it at that point because I made that choice, right? If you choose to do it, it's one thing, right? The thing is, how did it work out and what did you learn from it? In that case, doing it again, I would have not gone so aggressive. But I can't be mad in the moment that it happened. I'm actually proud that I took the opportunity to try to challenge myself in that moment.
You know, and I'm definitely at a much lower skill level than you, but here's something that I've noticed about myself when it comes to activator sequences.
Mhm.
If I am forced because of the nature of the stage to take a fairly aggressive activator sequence,
Mhm.
I usually do really well on it,
Mhm.
which probably means that I'm not trusting my shooting enough in other circumstances, I
Sure.
would think.
It's a couple things. Most people will find they perform their best when they're slightly uncomfortable. Why?
Yeah.
Right? It's not so far outside of what you feel is possible that you get tense. You feel the butterflies, so to speak. You're like, this is a little uncomfortable here. I don't love this, but I think I'm capable of doing it. So what happens is when you mentally make that commitment, your visual system, your processing system says, well, he's doing it anyway. Your conscious mind, let's say, he's doing it anyway, even though I've kind of protested that we shouldn't. So let's make sure the systems are operating
At their peak.
at their capacity, right?
Yeah.
And that's the visual system and the information processing system. So I found I have a process I use called smash and call. Targets that are meant to be smashed are within my skill set, but mentally I don't always feel comfortable shooting them that aggressively. But I know I can do it. So when let's say a 10 or 12 yard open target, if I say I have to smash this target, my job, the process is I see the streak within the A zone and I rip it as hard as I can. Right? That is uncomfortable. Right? For certain targets, for 3 close targets, not a big deal. Like that's easy. But for certain targets that are within my technical ability, but mentally not as comfortable, that commitment to that process ends up with the results that I want fast and accurate. I don't lose any points on it. I'm fast as well. And then it actually carries over into the rest of the stage. Because at this point, like like my mind is like, yes, he's doing it. So let's make sure everything's sharp. And then when I'm just calling shots on everything else, I'm faster because the whole
I like that. Yeah, because you've primed the pump, basically.
Right. This is what took me to top 20 at Production Nationals in 2021. This whole system. So good.
That's really cool. And I have a thought on that kind of wraps back to the randomized training and working an ACE like we were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So because the times and the hit factors when I'm training that way aren't as predictable. I mean, I'm sure they are if you can do the math like Eric Graffel, but I'm not there. Right. So what I've been kind of chasing on my runs, it is subjective, right? But what I want is an uncomfortable feeling with a high number of alphas. So I'm actually trying to get all alphas, but if I get, a Charlie or two, that's okay. But I don't want it to feel comfortable getting all alphas. I don't want it to be nice and reasoned and deliberate. I want it to be, I feel like it's going to be on the edge and still try to get all alphas anyway.
That goes back to the same that's the same exact thing. It's slightly uncomfortable. So your body, here's another thing. I read books every day. Steve Magnus has 2 books out, Do Hard Things and Winning the Inside Game. One of the things that they talked about, and you'll kind of resonate, you'll understand why this works well for you too. When you look at something as a doable challenge, right? It's stretching your limits, but it's something that you can commit to. Again, testosterone increases, cortisol drops. You rise to the challenge physiologically. If you go too far outside, it's seen as a threat now. It's seen as a threat. Testosterone drops, cortisol rises. It wants to make you avoid it. And that creates a lot of tension. So what you're seeing, that slight discomfort, but I know I can do this kind of feeling, your body rises to that physical challenge because it looks at it as an opportunity to challenge itself and thrive because it thinks it can win. Right. So from a chemical standpoint, that's actually highly, highly valuable. And that's why the mental side of things is super important, as we've discussed in the past. Like having that mindset of taking these opportunities as challenges to see how well we can do versus being afraid that you're going to lose or, worrying about your ego taking a hit or whatever. Those things affect our performances quite a bit. So learning that optimal energy state, that optimal feeling, even though it's subjective, that subjective feeling is important. It's almost a process-oriented thing. So some people, like me, I have to amp myself up to perform my best, whereas some people need to regulate themselves down.
Yeah, and that's me. I need to regulate myself down, not amp myself up. And I read about this. Which book was it in? Because I'm like you, I devour books, right? Mm-hmm. But it's called The Optimal Level of Arousal.
Okay. Yep.
And every athlete has an optimal level of arousal, and it changes based on the way your brain works, your personality type, your chemical makeup, because everybody's a little bit different.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and it's important, and this is why being a good coach is important, or having a good coach is important. Everybody's different. So what works for you is not necessarily going to work for me. And having, self-coaching, you have to recognize that and know not everything everybody says is not going to be true. Even things that I say are not going to be true for everybody. It's not meant to be. My job as a good coach is to get you to recognize how you are and be able to give you techniques, processes that are going to be able to get you to perform your best. And it's also to make you aware of all these things so that you can now become your own self-coach and create. I hear this information, I verify it, and within my own structure, it works, I keep it. If it doesn't work, I just discard it. It doesn't mean that it's wrong. It just means that it's wrong for me.
Well, and one of the things I found, and I think this realization was what made me, because I consider myself to be a good teacher, and I think my students would say that, right? And I think that the biggest step in that journey for me, because I started teaching martial arts as a teenager, like I've been teaching stuff ever since. A big part of being in special forces is teaching. I had instructor jobs in the police department. When I was in SWAT, I was one of the teachers, right? And learning that coaching cues are different for every single person is a huge realization. And learning that, like, I'm going to kind of give a little background on this. My first martial art was traditional Japanese karate, right? It was Shotokan, which is by far the flavor of karate that is the most rigid in how technique should look. Like they very much believe that form follows, or function follows form. I don't think that's the best way to train, right? And I'm not knocking the art. I learned a lot from the art and it was great, but not everyone, even in that art, the top people all look different.
Yeah.
Because they figured out what works for them. Right. And how tall are you?
6'3".
Right. Same height I am. Right. So our movement is not going to look like Christian Seiler's.
No.
It's just not. And he's got phenomenal movement. But what we need to do to move well is going to look different than what he does, even though the principles are the same. Right.
And that,
I am a Sasquatch, right? I'm a Yeti. I'm the missing link. My thumbs don't oppose, right? I have orangutan hands. A correct grip for me on a pistol is very different than a correct grip for my wife, who's 5'4" and has little Smurfette hands.
Yep.
The principles are the same, but they don't look anything alike. And if I tried to force her to grip a gun the way I grip a gun, I'd be doing a huge disservice to her.
Correct. And I think you were right in the sense that it's the pattern or the principle underlying the technique that's taught. So you read a lot of books. I read a lot of books. We've studied from a lot of people in different areas of life, right? I like learning from a lot of different people, and I also believe anybody who's training with me should also be training with one or two other trusted mentors. Like I think one mentor only is limited. I think you need 2 or 3 people that you really trust to get the results that you want for you. The reason why is because while you don't, what you're going to hear is you're going to hear different ways of approaching it or different ways of explaining it. But if you listen, you're going to hear similarities within those approaches. So the intention as a student, or even as an instructor learning how to better serve your students, it's what are the patterns of success?
Yeah.
Right. So Robert Vogel does it a certain way, right? I do it a certain way. Tactical performance would do it a certain way. You do it a certain way, right? But within that, you're going to hear similar things, right? Frank Proctor does it a certain way, you're going to hear those commonalities, and that's what you're going to key into for yourself. You're going to take that commonality and you're going to take these different approaches and play around with combining it. At this point, there's not a tremendous amount of revolutionary, innovative information. However, especially with today's technology. However, the innovative thing is how you combine the current information in a way that's different, that works for you. And that's like, if I talk about my grip, it's the combination of 4 or 5 different things along with my own insights.
Yeah. And I think there's an underlying truth here about how we learn that brings us back full circle to the randomized training, right?
Yep.
Like my buddy Paul Sharp was talking about this from a combative's perspective, and not a technical, but more of a tactical perspective. Like, how do I get my hook to work on a variety of opponents?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the best way to get my hook to work on a variety of opponents is fight as many different people as I can and try to throw a hook and get my butt handed to me if it doesn't work.
Yep.
Right. But what that's doing is that's giving you a bunch of different looks at the same technique that are slightly different. And I think that's kind of, in a way, what the randomized, the interleaving style of training as opposed to block training gives you. Mm-hmm. If I'm sitting there and working on draws, and I still do this in my warm-up, for ACE, right? Like I'll do a few draws of each different kind in my warm up, just to
and there's no reason not to, right?
Right.
As a warm up, again, what's the intention? What does singular style training do for you? It gets you fat. It gets you dialed in quick.
Yeah.
Right. So using that as a proper warm up, right, so that you're up to speed, I think that makes total sense.
So, but then if I'm doing that, is that set, right? They pretty much are all the same.
Yeah.
What the randomized training does for my draw is it's a little bit different every time. I'm moving a little bit, I'm coming in a little bit, I'm turning, I'm stepping to the side, I'm doing all these little different things that if I was going to try to do every single possible variation of block training, it would be a week's worth of training just for the draw, right?
Right. To get no significant increase in your draw speed.
Yep.
Right.
But with the randomized training, I'm getting those looks like Paul Sharp talked about. Everything's a little bit different. And the other benefit I think this has is I take the draw again. If my grip on the draw is slightly off at a match, I've had that slightly off grip in training because I've gotten enough looks on it. I think. So I think there's like a real strong truth to how we learn not just skills, but application of skills.
Yeah. And randomized training is messy. It's not gonna look like this perfect, kata. Like it's not gonna be this perfect execution of that. It's gonna be messy. You're gonna make a lot of mistakes. It's gonna be frustrating. But the intention is on game day, it's going to improve your result. Because again, you get all these different looks and you're now adaptable within the technique that you have. And that makes a big difference. It's not like you can't focus on the skill within the randomized style, like you said, with those draws. When I did Eric's class, the draw portion, aside from like we did some block stuff, the block stuff was group shooting and draws to a 10-yard target. Right? That was it. Everything else was randomized outside of it. After we did that, right? Our next draw exercise was we had 10 targets or 12 targets. Everybody would line up. They would shoot the first target. The goal would be to get 2 alpha, right? And all the targets were different, from a full open to 1.5 inches of brown with a no shoot, like total range of difficulties. You'd shoot the one target. Okay, now take a step to your right. Okay, everybody move down. Shoot that target. Right? You shoot the next, and you just go each target to target. So the draw itself would be the same in terms of getting the gun up to sights on target, but the look is different on every single target, right? So that's that, and it wasn't always perfect, right? It was messy, it was clunky, it was challenging, but it makes you better in the long run.
Well, and what are you training for? Like, that's an important question, right? Are you training to look good while you're training? Are you training to accomplish on game day?
It's you're training to be an Instagram instructor, and a lot of us fall victim to that. Again, going back to ego, some of us will fall victim to that where we want to have that look, Yeah. But if you learn to accept the fact that, it's not about how you look, it's about what's going to get you the performance you want when it matters. You need to, and surrendering your ego to whatever that process is, whatever that definition of success is. You can also create different definitions of success that are more in line with what you're looking to do. So I started actually right before we got on here. I actually started doing a practice a couple days ago that I'm going to continue. That what does success for the day look like? Right. And I'm going to define what I think it looks like in all aspects with the focuses. So if I'm doing ACE training, it's going to be, okay, I want my focus to be my visual speed is maximum or whatever. Like, I'm giving myself a process oriented definition of success for, business, life, like all these things. And I just write down a couple definitions and I try to live according to those definitions. Defining success in the right way is going to help you pull yourself out of just trying to look a certain way and actually trying to do the actions that are going to get you what you want in the long run.
Well, and all right, here's a little segue. This would be a good way to wrap it up because I know you got to go. What it really boils down to, I think, and this is kind of back to my underlying theme of the process of training improves your life and who you are, not just being good at that skill. Right.
Yeah.
And what you're describing is living intentionally, like living with intent. And I think that matters. I think far too many people, would be a lot happier regardless of what their intent is. It doesn't have to be what mine is or what yours is. It doesn't have to be any of that. It can be whoever they would like to be, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you live with intent based on who it is you want to be, the best version of you, I mean, yeah, you're not going to be happy every day. It's not going to be a continual improvement. It's not going to be a nice, smooth, easy ride. Life is hard.
Not supposed to be.
Nope. But what it is going to be is it's going to be a life that makes you comfortable with who you are and comfortable with how you live. And I don't mean comfort in the sense of being lazy or easy. I mean, your self-image is living this certain way that is best for you. So you're kind of actualizing who you are. You're being a better version of yourself. Did I articulate that in any way that's even remotely understandable? Because I kind of faltered there for a minute.
No. It sounded good to me, and I'm sure it'll sound good to everybody else. The idea is the truth vibrates the highest, right? The truth. So for us, from a goal perspective, the goal is not necessarily the thing that makes us that makes it worth it. It's who you become in the process of attaining that goal that really is the joy of the journey, so to speak. Right? Yeah. The goal happens, boom, done. A lot of people have goal depression because they make their goal and now they don't know what to do. But if you
fall in love with the process, and the process is the point, and then that can translate when you move on to other things in life, because you're still in love with the process of getting better, regardless of what that is,
right?
Whether it's basketball or competitive shooting, right?
And you've become the person that you want to become in order to be able to succeed at any task in life. So like we were talking about this before, but so I have my like open-ended, what I call affirmations, where it's all about, this is how I live my life. I live my life unapologetically according to these things, right? I'm honoring God in all I do. I'm serving others by teaching them how to have great success and abundance in their lives. I'm so grateful for exceeding my potential. I'm the best husband for my wife, Janine, right? I'm thankful that money comes to me in increasing quantities from multiple sources. And I'm a top 10 competitor at nationals. Like those are my open end. I read those every day. Like this is how I live my life. And then there's some other things that are going to help people here, which you won't be able to see this, but I can also send you a picture of this. Couple things, right? What's the legacy I want to leave? Right? That's a question that people should ask.
Oh, yeah.
And then you write it down. So like for me, I want to reach millions of people and impact them in a positive way. I want to set the example for them that influences their values and actions for the better. I want to add value to their lives and teach them how to have great success and abundance. I want these things they learn from me to be able to be passed down for generations. Like that's the legacy. And then I write down, like, what habits do I need to accomplish it? I need to be continually improving myself daily. I need to persist through struggles and challenges. I need to be cultivating meaningful relationships often. I need to be creating and sharing valuable content. I need to play the long game, 10 years plus, decades. I need to be interested in others. I need to continue to create success and abundance for myself. I need to pray often for God's help and guidance toward his purpose and calling for me. And I need to continue to prioritize what is most important. And then you could write down what habits are sabotaging me currently. Like this came from, I forget the name of the book, but I think it's The Encore Effect by Tom Ziglar, which is Zig Ziglar's son. What habits are sabotaging me currently? So for me, self-image and confidence growth, defeating the enemy of self-doubt, shyness towards attention, right? You wouldn't necessarily think that, but I don't love attention, but I do love interaction. Being too comfortable at times, being too humble at times, right? So sometimes I try to surrender too much. So I need to have more confidence and pride in who I am. And then getting on task quicker. I can get distracted if I'm not careful. So like that's a great thing for you guys, anybody who's listening to this, to sit down and write down. And this I have a ton of information in this journal I write every day. But one other thing that will be valuable to this conversation. Write down the values or principles that you want to use to live your life, define them, and write down how they apply to you. So I'll share these. This is from High Performance Habits by Brendan Burchard for anybody who's interested in the book. And I have this on my phone too. So this is an alarm. I use phone alarms. But if anybody wanted to see this, if they could see it, maybe, maybe not. But I have all these on my phone here. Right. Focus. So value number one, and I wrote these, I don't know, 8 years ago at this point. And they've evolved as time has gone on. Focus, the center of interest or activity. I'm attentive in the moment. I'm where my feet are. Drive, relentlessly compelled by the need to accomplish a goal, very hardworking and ambitious. I am relentless in my pursuit of my priorities and goals. I live unapologetically in accordance to the priorities of my life. Consistent, showing steady conformity to character, belief, profession, or custom. I show up and I succeed. I figure out a way to make things happen. I treat others with consistency of character and integrity. Number 4, excellence, the quality of being outstanding or extremely good. I work at what is important long enough to achieve mastery and more. I become an expert in my best performances and how to get more of them. I am insanely curious about learning to become even better. Number 5, service, contribution to the welfare of others. I give to others as others have given to me. I give without expectation of return, knowing that abundance will flow as a result. And the last one is confidence, a sense of certainty about my ability that allows me to bypass conscious thought and execute subconsciously. I'm confident in my ability to succeed and grow. I minimize mental chatter, and I trust in the process I've grown and mastered. So those are the values that I currently, I mean, I've had these for years, but they've grown over time with the last couple. You guys think about that in your life. How do you want your life to be defined? And then live that truth.
I think this matters a lot. And I know a lot of people would kind of dismiss this as, psychobabble or whatever, right? But it's not. It's not. It's like anything else. If you don't know exactly where you are in your skill set, you don't know how to get to where you want to be.
Mm-hmm.
If you're doing strength training, if you don't know what your potential is on the bench press in the moment, then you can't plan to get it to where you want it to be, right? This is no different than that. You've got to define who you want to be, and you've got to know where you are now.
Yep.
And figure out how to get from one to the other.
You have to separate. You have to create a direction. This is what I want to be. You have to create a direction and start moving in that direction some way. It doesn't have to be perfect, and it's not going to be, but as you start to see, okay, I'm going this way, how do I continue to go a little bit more? The closer you get, the more precise your direction is going to be. And you think about this, like, there's a lot of people in life that are busy, but they're not doing anything. If that makes sense. Right?
It does. Some people fill their time with minutia to be busy.
Yep.
But there's no overriding goal on what they're trying to accomplish.
The most common thing is a consistent person who gets no results. Right? Consistency, yeah. You could be consistent and not get any results because of what you've done. And that's just being busy. Like, I'm being busy, I'm going through the motions, I'm not really learning or growing. So that's a big thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I know you've got to take off, but like the last thought there is, this is back to like the whole being mindful thing, right? Like, what am I accomplishing with this task? Am I doing a task that matters? Am I doing it in the way that I need to do it to achieve what I'm trying to do with it, right? Like a great example of this is people's practice sessions on the range. So many people will just pick 5 things that look cool on YouTube
Mhm.
and go do them. But
Mhm.
there's no intent behind each drill. What end state am I trying to accomplish by doing this drill? What training effect am I trying to have? Right.
Yeah.
And that applies, I think, to everything in life.
It does. No, 100%. Like, again, create the definition of success, create the standards of action that you want to use, and then work towards it. Right? It's not meant to be perfect. It's meant to be a process of growth.
Yep.
But if you don't start, most people don't start.
Yeah.
Right? Most people don't start, and there's a lot of people that only want to start when they have everything perfect.
It's never going to be perfect. Yeah.
If you start when everything is perfect, you've already lost the opportunity.
Yep.
You have to be willing to start when it's uncertain.
Well, on that note, how do people find you for the accelerator program and to get started on becoming the best shooter in person they can be?
So I have my website, robepifania.net, EPIFANIA.net. Go on there. It'll give you a lot of information. It'll give you some free lessons as well, so you guys can start learning from me before we ever work together. My YouTube, my Instagram, I'm very active on. So if you guys have questions, you can reach out to me there. Instagram is best. I respond the best there at Rob Epifania. Simple. YouTube is the same thing. You can start searching my name and you'll be able to find me somewhere. Anybody who does reach out to me, I turn notifications off, but I check Instagram once or twice a day. So I will get back to you if you reach out to me. And if you ask questions, I will help you, regardless of if you're an official student of mine or not. It's not my intention. My intention is to help you guys as best I can. So,
well, anybody who's interested in getting better should definitely seek you out. I think you've got a phenomenal resource there with the accelerator program, and your free stuff on YouTube and Instagram is also good. It's also a wealth of knowledge. So people definitely need to check that out. Thanks for coming on the show again. We got to do part 3 soon because it's always a good conversation.
yes, it is.
And
My
I hope
pleasure,
everybody, hope everybody out there enjoyed it as much as I did. And we will talk to everybody the next time.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me, Matt. Appreciate the time.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this episode of The Way is in Training. Please come back again as we explore how training makes us better at our craft and better in our everyday lives. See all of you soon.